Good evening, everyone, to this week's Node-RED live stream. My now quite regular 8 PM Monday evening live stream where I spend a bit of time working on some bit of Node-RED development work, whether that's in the editor, the runtime, nodes, whatever it might be. So this is about just developing the Node-RED project rather than using Node-RED itself, but actually developing some of the internals. If you're on the live stream, do say hi in the chat so I know you're there and that I know that I've clicked the buttons and I am actually live. Now, I have to admit this week I haven't got a huge plan for tonight, but I thought rather than take the easy option and skip a week, I would dive in and try and find something that would be interesting to dig into and look at. So for those following the project, we shipped the 1.1 release a couple of weeks ago, and then last week we did a couple of maintenance releases. 1.1.1, which fixed up some a few nice little issues just to get tidied up, including one that some of the rendering changes we'd made in 1.1.0 seemed to be having a bigger performance impact than I had anticipated. So managed to find some nice fixes for that. I think I even did those on the live stream last week. So the good news was the feedback on the 1.1.1 maintenance release was those fixes were good. Everyone seems to be much happier. No one else has reported similar issues. So now, and then we did 1.1.2. I slipped out late on Friday night, having spent a lot of Friday addressing issues around using Node-RED on touch interfaces, particularly iOS. You couldn't scroll the workspace on iOS, which kind of sucked. You could on Android, so clearly something odd was going on. Never quite got to the bottom of what specifically was broken on iOS and working on Android, but basically managed to fix up a whole bunch of problems around the touch support and its reliability in general. So, whilst I think that using Node-RED on touch user interfaces is not where I spend all my time focused, when there's a whole bunch of remaining usability issues. It felt, having spent a day solving these problems, it was worth slipping a release out to address them. So that was good. So for tonight, I was in a couple of minds about what to do next, whether to switch gears a bit to the 1.2 release, which, if you remember, we now have a schedule for, so looking to do that 1.2 release end of September. On that note, we've started gathering items on GitHub, milestones, items in the 1.2 plan. Now, all of these are pre-existing. None of this is new work as such. Well, none are newly identified pieces. We've got a bunch of long-standing pull requests we want to get in from contributors from Hitachi. Then there's just I sort of did a bit of a cherry picking through of the backlog of issues and produce a bit of a wish list of issues that it would be nice to work through to get into 1.2. Part of the problem is, a lot of them are just a bit tedious and, just need jumping in and sorting out. Some need more investigation and, some may not get resolved in the 1.2 time frame. But it didn't really feel like there was anything in there that was interesting enough to dive into right now. So the other thing we look at, I stare at from time to time, for those who haven't seen us refer to it before, we maintain this public Trello board. It's linked to from nodered.org/about/something. It's in the about section on the website. It links to all the different sites we use. But this is when we talk about sticking things on the backlog, this is, see, now I've now realised, until I'm out of touch, there we go. I'm actually going to let you guys see what I'm looking at. So let's just flip back. So here's the 1.2 milestone that I was just talking about. That's there to go see. And then the Trello whiteboard Yeah, so this is where there's long-term ideas. I mean, long-term ideas, lots of individual features organized around different major areas of Node-RED. In earlier releases, we would use this board to plan what was going into releases. Now we're trying to do this more regular thing. I think we're going to try and use GitHub milestones a bit more, and so we have a better overview of features and new releases. So, but this is still where when people suggest stuff on the forum, I'll just throw it up on here somewhere so the idea is captured. It doesn't commit us to doing it. It's still a bit of a pick and choose, and things change over time. There's some stuff on here that's been on here for like 6, 7, 8 years. 8 years? That would be impressive. The project's not 8 years old, but you get the point. So sometimes it's nice just to dip in here and just remember some of those features we've talked about before that we'd like to do. And when we're at the start of a release cycle, like we are now for the 1.2 release, you sometimes dip in here. One that I keep wanting to come back to, and I'm sort of tempted to make a start on, is being able to provide autocomplete in the typed input widgets for context. So when you type in, flow dot whatever or global dot whatever, being able to have a bit of content assist is a idea that it's one of those ideas. I think there's quite a few interesting moving parts, and I'd like to dip into at some point. Whether that's in the 1.2 timeframe, I don't know, but that might be one that crops up here in a future week. So a lot of these are just sort of small individual points, and kind of I always look for what are the bigger ideas. And don't refresh the page. There we are. So this first column are some of the sort of bigger ideas that are don't fit into any of these other categories, or they're just high level concepts that need more refining. They're sort of reminders to come back and look at these things from time to time. I should say, hi guys in the chat. I do see you. Nice to see you all back for however long you're staying for. Like I said, I'm always good to get the shout out. Like I said, I'm not yet homing in on exactly what I'll be looking at. So the other thing to consider is Mauricio did raise this issue yesterday around group theming. So one of the things I did manage to get into 1.12 was when you create a group in the editor now, it picks up the default theme of that group from the theme you have. So if you've got the default Node-RED theme, it's one. But if you've got, like Mauricio's Midnight theme, the default group appearance will be more suitable for that. And I put some changes in so that, or at least how it worked in my testing, was if you set any of the group appearance properties to a default, it wouldn't write that default into your flow. So when it got imported by someone else, it would pick up their default, which would just make the groups more portable if you didn't customize them between light and dark theme. So, I suspect most users will set colors and will change stuff, but here's an example of something that's not quite working as it was intended. Probably worth going to spend 5-10 minutes on that one in this stream. Other recent issues, we have got this one came in a few days ago. It's a problem with cloning messages between nodes that didn't exist in 1.0 but has broken in 1.1. It's going to be a side effect. We moved from the clone npm library for doing cloning to the low-dash utility library. And unfortunately, when you make changes like that for good reason, you end up finding these odd edge cases that you didn't know existed. So again, not one I'm going to spend any time on right now, because I just don't know what we do about it. We changed the cloning library for good reason, to fix other issues, to improve performance. And in this instance, the node is trying to send a native Mongo query object, which isn't JSON encodable. It's a custom JavaScript object. So, it is very much in that realm of, I don't know what we do, because we kind of say messages ought to be JSON encodable. And unfortunately, we never strictly policed that. So people have flows that don't, which pass JavaScript enhanced objects, and you trip over issues like this. So yeah, that just needs some research and stuff. This issue is an interesting one. It's one of those, I've been using and developing Node-RED for long enough. There are a number of bugs in the code that I know exist, and, well, whether they're bugs, there are a number of behaviors that I know exist, and I sort of like spotting when someone else spots it and they actually raise an issue to tell us about it. So this is a case in point where if you pass an array to debug, and that array has got object properties as well as sort of actual array index properties, then in debug sidebar you don't see the object properties. Now that's always been the case. It's I think I talked about this last week. In fact, I don't know how we address this, how we display those object properties without severely killing the performance of passing arrays to debug, because now we have to iterate every property and try and identify which are numerically indexed properties, which aren't. We can't just iterate over the elements so easily. There might be stuff we can do, but anyway. And then we fast get into the long tail of issues that would be nice to tidy up. We've got how many? 165 open issues, but I kind of figure once you get back to about a year old, we could probably afford just to close all those older issues and just say, look, if this is still a problem, re-raise it. Otherwise, we're really not, if we haven't fixed it by now. But I'm not going to do that tonight. And likewise, on that same thing, we've got 50 pull requests. Again, once you get, there's the odd one dotted through here that is in a plan, we will get round to, but it very quickly becomes a very long tail of stuff that, if we haven't merged yet, then probably not going to. But there we are. So, what shall we do? If anyone's shouting out for anything they're particularly... that's the other thing in the chat. Give us a shout in the chat if there's something in particular you'd like me to look at or talk about. But I'm sure Mauricio will be more than happy for me to spend some time fixing his bug. Let's just go and see what's going on and see if is there an obvious problem. So where are we? I've only just started this machine up, so let's just get everything lined up. So we're in master. I did do a git pull before I started. Get that running. I think the other reason I'm not sort of zoned in on something is I've spent all day doing documentation. So my head's not really in the code space right now. Okay, so we've run up the code. Let's go see what this behavior is. I'm going to do it with the default theme. No, don't go there. I'm not actually set up to do custom themes on this box, so let's just see what happens with what we have here. And get the console open. Just shout if you can't see something. Right, let's crack on. So we have a function. Let's create a group. Okay, so I've created a group, not done any modification to it. Now if I export that group and format it, interestingly, I can see it has all these style properties. And I wasn't expecting that. I was not expecting that to have any of those style properties because they're all the defaults. So what's going on? 112. I'm slightly confused now. What has gone wrong? That should not have any of those. What happens if we edit it, hit done, hit export? There we go. Right. So the logic. Okay. When it creates the group, it's giving the group the default style and it's sticking all the properties into the group. The logic I added to filter out properties, the group properties that are the default and remove them, kicks in when you close the edit dialog. So that's something to tidy up. We can do in a minute. But here you can see the only flag we leave set is whether to show the label or not. Otherwise, all those other values are defaults. Okay, oops. So that's working, but in the issue, Musha says create a group, double click to edit it, don't change anything, click done, double click on the same group again. The group loses the style defined in the custom theme. Okay, so if we now edit this again and hit done, okay, so it doesn't, well, that's worked, but then I haven't got a custom theme. So let's let us set ourselves up with the custom theme, and may as well use Musho's. So we're going to install Midnight Red. Open a new window. Go into my .NET Red directory, install Midnight Red, and it's all done, and then edit my settings file. I still think there's something for us to do to make it easier to install custom themes and support having a theme chooser in the editor itself. That would be neat, wouldn't it? But that's for another day. Right, user home, and then I trust all the rest is right. Let's restart Node-RED. Yeah, being able to do custom themes, theme switcher in the editor, make it easier to install themes. There's stuff to be done there, isn't there? Right, let's reload. And then we have Midnight theme. See, I wish Chrome would let you theme scroll bars. The hacks I've in the past looked into the hacks you have to do to theme scroll bars. It basically involves hiding the scroll bars and using custom HTML widgets for your scroll bars, which is just daft, but yeah, there you go. Scroll bars. I mean, it's and the only reason I've got scroll bars is because I've got a mouse plugged in. If I didn't have the mouse, if it's just the touchpad, then it would, the scroll bars wouldn't be there. Anyway, I digress. So we create a group. And then, okay, so there's the group. See, personally, I would make the group border just a little bit more popped out than that, but that's fine. No, don't create another group. What am I doing? What am I doing? Exporting the group. So let's have a look. Okay, so there you can see all of the theme's default values. I'm just going to copy that just so because I'm not so familiar with this theme's values. That's fine. So we edit it. Now is this all? Yeah, 2E333A, 2E33, yeah, that's all good. A4, that's right, yeah. Okay, so it has got all those. I'll hit cancel. Oh, do I hit cancel or done? Probably want to hit done at that point. Okay, now we export again. And good, the style has been stripped. Very good. And then we edit again. And so the outline's right. The outline is 2E333A. But the stroke opacity has been bumped back up to 100%. And the fill has none and 100%. So that's interesting. It's kept the right outline colour, but not opacity. Fill's gone haywire, and then colour and position I don't believe have changed. North, west, yeah. Okay. Hit cancel on that, and let's just open it up again. Yeah. Okay, so it's not picking up all the right bits. Let's try and debug this. So, I've not even got the source up yet. Let's oh, I just made this window bigger than you can see. I've just realised. Let's bring it back. Okay. We want to be in UI group. So in here we've got default group style. And default group style gets populated here. So what we do is we add a div to the workspace, but we position it absolutely and 1,000 pixels off the top of the screen so you don't see it. But it's got the right CSS class for the group. We can then ask the browser to calculate the CSS for that element, and then we can extract out its stroke, all of its properties. So that's how I can extract the current theme's default styling. And we have to do that for both the group body, which is the outline, and also the group label, which is the text. Now, let's have a look. If we just, let's just console.log group style.stroke. Stroke opacity. And I've got a theory about this. It might slightly depend how. Okay, so we're going to print out what we think is the default style for across the group settings. Okay, So you can see, I hope you can see, you can just about see, RGB 46, 51, 58. So it's got the RGB stroke, was it first? Yeah, stroke, 0.5 stroke opacity, the fill, and the fill opacity. You'll notice, well, I'm sure, well, Mauricio will notice, in his theme, I bet he has not got RGB. I bet he's got a hex value. But when get computed style, the standard DOM thing, returns a color, it always returns it as an RG in this RGB format, regardless of how it was set in the original style sheet. Which is fine, but we want to use hex color code, so that's why I've got this convert color to hex utility function in here somewhere. Somewhere, he says. Oh yeah, right below. Yeah, it's right there. So that's why I've got this utility function that can just parse out that RGB value and generate the suitable hex for it. Okay, so that shows us we are picking up. So remember, it was the opacity that wasn't being set correctly. So you can see 0.5 is being picked up just fine. All right, so at this point, we want to look at, okay, what happens when we close the edit dialog, because that's where the logic exists to delete the delete those properties. So here you can see the on edit save. If you're familiar with creating nodes, this is the type definition for a group node. You can see, yeah, on edit save goes and gets, basically populates the full style object, stroke, fill, opacity, the label, if label set, both position and color. It sets all those properties, and then it goes through and it, what does it do that? That is very interesting. So yes, this is some old code that shouldn't be there. Ignore that block that I've highlighted because we're about to delete it. What I was coming to show you was this block, which for each of the properties we care about, stroke, fill, opacities, color, and label position, this is a little for each loop over each of those property names. And if the node style for that property matches the default, we delete it. Now up here, I think this is old code I should have deleted when I added in this bottom block. This was doing pretty much the same logic, but for opacity. So delete the opacity if the value is 1. We don't want that because we want it to pick up the right default opacity. So having deleted that, because it was the opacity going wrong, I'm just going to go back and see, is that the fix? If that's the fix, then, well, we can all go and have an early night. So I've created a group, export it. It's still got all the properties. We will still go and fix that in a minute. But we edit it, and you can see, yeah, 50% opacity, 50% opacity, hit done. Export it again and have a look, and yep, style, it's only got label true, so it has removed all the default properties. So now we edit it. And the outline, the stroke opacity's gone back up to 100%. So removing that bit of code was worthwhile, but it's not the fix. Okay. But we saw it was stripping off all the default values correctly. So the bug is not here. The bug is going to be up in the on edit prepare. So this is where it builds the edit dialog and does its thing. So, oh yeah, I can see the bug. Right. I thought I was going to be rooting around, but no, it's right there in front of me. So what this does is, in this dialog, we've got these three color picker widgets, which is a standard Node-RED widget that no, that wasn't color, that's color. So this widget is a standard widget I added for the group feature, and we reuse for the subflow colors now. And the API is this red.colorPicker. So this block here. So if I remember correctly, the way it works is in your edit form. Let's go find it. In your edit form, you have somewhere here. How does it work? No. Oh yeah, sorry, I see. This will create a color picker widget with the ID of node input style stroke, and it has a hidden input element so you can get its value, and we append it to the right bit of the edit dialog earlier on. And these are the configuration properties for the color picker widget we want to appear when we click the button that it will generate. So we've got value, which is the value it starts with. I'll come back to that in a sec. Palette, so this lets you specify what preset colors you want. You don't have to have this set of colors. You can have other colors. So we use that in the subflow node color customization because we provide a different palette of possible node colors or default node colors. Yeah, and then a whole bunch of stuff. You know, how many color swatches are there? How big are they? How much space? So it's quite customizable. None true meaning should there be the box to set the value to none if no color is valid. And then opacity, and here lies the bug. So let's look at the value, which works fine. So it will set the value to style, which is set just above, coming from the node's own style, style.stroke. If that is not set or is null, we then fall back to the default group style stroke. And if for any reason we haven't been able to pick that up, we fall back to that color. So at least it has a color in this. I mean, that it should never fall back to that, but at least it will fall back to something if something goes wrong. Now, if you compare that with opacity, we look at the style stroke opacity, so the group's own stroke opacity, and if that is not set, we fall back to the value of 1.0. What I've missed off here is to go and get the default group style value. Now, and this is one of those JavaScript 101 gotchas. This trick of using the double bar to provide a default value, that works because as it's a logical OR operator. And what it does is, this OR operator is, if the left-hand side is a true like value, it will return that value. However, if the left-hand side is a false like value, it will return what's on the right-hand side. And this is the classic JavaScript bug of being true and false like, by which I mean it doesn't just mean null and undefined. It could also mean the value 0. So the value 0 is considered false-like. But in this instance, a value of 0 is a perfectly good and proper value to have. So this logic is also broken because if the style was ever set to 0, this would cause it to fall back to the default group style. So whilst this double pipe is convenient, like this line up here, it's convenient shorthand, it's only safe if it's only safe if the value you're trying to default can't legitimately be false-like, and the value you want it to fall back to can't legitimately be, you want that to be something else. So we need to replace this with a bit of a longer check. So we want to do style has own property, and finally doing some typing rather than talking. There are operators in future versions of JavaScript that might help here, but we're at least a couple of years away from being able to use those in the Node-RED code base with abandon. So if it has that property, then we want it. Otherwise, we do the same again. Default group style has own property stroke opacity, and this line's now getting very long, and if it does, then we return that. Otherwise, we return a 1.0. But I need a couple of it's a very long, tedious line, but I don't feel the need to split that up. So if the node's own style has stroke opacity, we use it. Otherwise, if the default style has its own stroke opacity, we use it. Otherwise, we use 1.0. And just copy and paste that down here, because it's exactly the same bug for the fill opacity. And I actually remember to rename this because it's fill opacity. And then whilst we're here, we just scan down for the other color picker, which is the color, the label color. But you'll note for this color picker, we don't offer the none true option, and we don't set opacity at all. So because I don't set those two properties in the UI, that's why there is no opacity picker, and that cross isn't there for the X. I figured it was pointless having a none option for the color, because if you don't want it, then don't show it. Likewise, opacity, I thought it's so small anyway, making it slightly translucent would be unlikely desirable. Hey, I'm sure someone can complain at some point if that's a real issue. Okay, so we've done those two lines. Let's see what's what. So we create the group, we edit it, we hit done, we edit it again, and opacity is 50%, and fill is none. Was that right? What's the default? Oops. What is this theme's fill? Okay, no, it's not picking it. The fill's gone as well, hasn't it? Okay, that's interesting. So we've fixed, 50%, but code style, I think Ristomati, it just comes from a fact we don't have ESLint set up to nag for well-formed spaces around. I tend not to get too caught up on it as long as it's legible. I'm not going to refuse a code review if, like up here, if there's not exactly the right white space around all the brackets, as long as it's not all over the place, as long as it's self-consistent and still easy to read, I'm not going to lose sleep over the odd space. Well, the odd space not being there. But I try to at least be self-consistent, except for when I fail. But there we go. Oh, okay. So it wasn't picking up the default fill, and you can see exactly why here. Because it doesn't. If fill's not, I just completely missed adding in fallbacks for the fill. Good. Let's try that. That's good. So we've got 383 C45 50% for the fill. C3A 50%. That's all good. So we hit done. We open it up again, and we've still got 338 at 50%, and we've still got C45 at 50%. Job is good. Okay. Right. So that's fixed it. That's the bug. I'm just going to go and I know I stuck some console.logs. Get rid of them. We don't want those console.logs. So we got rid of the unnecessary deletes of the styles there, and we just fix up the logic for falling back when a group doesn't provide its own style there. Cool. Now I think, that's all goodness. All right. You know what? I think we're going to ship that. Well, we're going to commit that. We're not going to... we won't be doing a 113 just for this issue, but it's always worthwhile just having another look at the changes. Just to make sure. I mean, the usual thing I leave in is a random console.log or that type of thing. Something I want to... that topic for another week if I haven't done it by then. I'll talk about it in a minute, but let me just focus on this. I think that those are all the changes we want. No one in the chat has shouted at me for doing something silly yet. Oops. Commit that. Sure, group theme. Oh no, it's all going wrong. Quit, try again. Right. Ensure group theme picks up theme defaults properly. Oh, fixes. What's the theme number? Error number. 2651. Done. Push. Well, I think this is the second, maybe third of Mauricio's issues I've fixed live on this stream. They're just, thankfully, they're all quite easy fixes. So if you keep finding the easy bugs, then I'll keep fixing them. Rishmati saying something's broken, but it took me a while to realise. I assume you mean in Twitch, not in Node-RED. Don't tell me it's broken just after I push to Git, but there we are. There we are. And somehow I managed to, again, 3-line fix, and I haven't spent all evening talking about it yet. So that issue is now closed. So that will be in 113 whenever 113 emerges. At the moment, I think this is the only code change that's gone in since 112. So, like I said, there's nothing else outstanding. Anything else I can usefully talk about? So I think this idea of making it easier to manage the themes is an interesting one. I think the more we can avoid the user having to edit their settings file, the better. But there are lots of people people embedding Node-RED, using Node-RED, that might not want those facilities exposed to their end users. So that's in part why the editor theme stuff is kind of hidden in the, well, buried in the settings file, not front and center in the editor. But I think we should find a way to expose a theme picker in the editor in a way that can be turned off by those who want to embed Node-RED and just stick with whatever theme fits for whatever environment they're embedding Node-RED in. So a few interesting things to think about there around, does that mean, how do they get installed? And those sorts of considerations. If we allow them being installed from the editor, we have to think about, well, what about those users who are running in environments like running in a Docker image or running in a cloud environment like the IBM Cloud, where writes to the file system are lost when the app is restarted. And there's all those sorts of headaches that, lots of the features we add, we have to consider about all these use cases that aren't so apparent, shall we say, for many of you who just use Node-RED, on your own personal devices. That's some of the complexity of some of these features we expose, and thinking about how we go about exposing them. So that's interesting stuff. Another question. Is it possible to replace grip.png with something CSSable? Grip.png, that will be this grey bar here, wouldn't it? I don't know. I don't think that looks too out of place in your theme. It kind of matches the font of the colour of your buttons, but let's just double check. Am I Oh, are you doing something in your theme with that? You are, aren't you? No. Yes? Ah, okay. So you are overriding it with a... that's very clever. So, oh, you can't see what I'm looking at. Thank you. I see what you mean by saying screen now. Boom. Okay. So what we're talking about is this little grey sliver that is the grip that sort of indicates that something we gripped. Now, what I now see this theme is doing is, so the default CSS that Node-RED provides just inserts this grip.png. It inserts this image, and that's that. Oh, doesn't help if I've killed the code in the background. Let's just get that going so I can show you that. So it inserts a PNG, and the Midnight theme does this clever trick of overriding the CSS with an inline PNG. So this is a base64 PNG actually embedded in the CSS directly. So it replaces grip.png. Should have started by now. Yeah, so look, if I load grip.png, you can see it's just this grey bar. But there are some issues with that. Yeah, it would be nicer for the theme authors not to have to create their own equivalent bit of thing to do that. You also note, I created the grip very much because we only had vertical separators, like the sidebar. I mean, the sidebar was the one and only one, but now since then I did add the code for the horizontal separator, and if you can see, what's going to happen if I do this? Boom! Right, yes, you can see that, can't you? Yeah, you can just see this little fuzzy thing here, which is the grip but rather than being horizontal, as you might expect, it's still vertical. So yeah, I think we can certainly look at doing something in pure CSS rather than using an image for that. Might just need to stick in a div or something and style it. We'll worry about positioning and size and all that sort of stuff, and then let the theme override it. Yes, anything else? Oh, and there's all sorts of little UI tweaks to do. I mean, one of the ones that some people have asked about before is the sidebar icons up here. At the moment, those icons get listed in the order that the different sidebars get registered. So you can see here I haven't got any third-party sidebars. I've not even got Node-RED Dashboard installed on this instance. So this is the order these sidebars register themselves, which is how we control the order. Particularly in this new release where we've added help, which for some users it's now pushed, particularly if you've got projects enabled, it has pushed the debug button right to the edge, and dashboard, just pushes things down into the menu. So some people have asked to be able to reorder these buttons into their preferred order. Now, whilst it may not look like it, this widget up here for the sidebar tabs is actually the same widget as we use for sidebar tabs. It's the same tab component we use in lots of places. It's just got this extra mode where you can, I forget how you turn it on, but it automatically displays these buttons for the other tabs with a drop down to select the others. But as you'll know, you can already reorder these tabs. So it's kind of, most of the code is there to support reordering these buttons. What isn't there is how that then gets stored, because obviously reordering tabs reflects the order those elements appear in your flow file. So we'd need some way to store that, any customization to this order, to your runtime settings, which is your editor settings, like all the other customizations you can make. So that's no problem. Anyway, so that was something I might poke around with, but that's one thing with Node-RED. There's I've got a huge list of things to do. Another good example, again, what defines the width of the sidebar when opening it using the handle. What determines, so in theory the way it should work, and I'm trying to remember now, when you're shrinking it, it will get to a certain size, and I don't think, your theme, it's not very clear in your theme. If I just switch back to our theme, so this might be something to slightly tweak in your theme. Let me see, wouldn't it be good just to be able to switch themes without having to edit files and restart Node-RED? So yeah, the sidebar tries to remember what size it was when it was closed and then restores itself back to that size. Some sidebars will have a slight preference in terms of their minimum size. Yeah, so if I shrink, okay, so it is, I thought it was more pronounced, more visually apparent, but you can see that the sidebar border goes a dashed line to show if I release it now it's going to get closed, and then if I reopen with the button it goes back to the size it's sort of the size it was, whereas if I click this button and then reopen it with the button, it should always go back to whatever size it was. So that's how it's meant to work. There might be subtle inconsistencies, and I'm sure people will find them and tell me about them. There is, interesting, a bit of a glitch I can see with some of the layout. Can you see this bottom border? It disappears. Let me zoom in. What's going? Oh no, don't zoom in there. Yeah, there's some weird glitch. You can see this border has disappeared. Oh, I'm not gonna. I have to admit that all the code for dragging this sidebar and resizing stuff is incredibly hacky and ripe for reworking. Yeah. But what was I talking about before? Reordering these. That's the thing. Oh, the other thing again, just trying to build a framework to help people create interesting UIs. This bottom bar down here, the footer of the workspace, that actually got completely redeveloped. Maybe in 1.0? Yeah, in 1.0. So what might look just like a panel on the screen with some buttons added to it, this is an actual component of the editor with buckets for widgets on both sides, and things can register widgets and they will start appearing along this bottom bar, either starting on the left or on the right. So the view tools register themselves as workspace footer widgets. So one of the things I want to do with the projects feature, this UI for managing your local changes, I haven't got remote configured, so I can't show you that, but having the indication as to the Git status, and like with local changes, how many changes you've got, that type of stuff. I want to add those as widgets into this footer, which allow you to click on to do controls, because I think that will help pull some of the version control functionality, if you've got it enabled, more to the front. Yeah, I mean, I could talk for an hour about all the changes I would like to make to the Node-RED UI if I had the time and resource, but yeah. Anyway, lots to do. So I'm going to wrap it up there just about within the hour, which is good. I've consistently been about 10-15 minutes over the hour, so I'm going to keep it on the hour this time. So there we go. I'm hoping that next week I'll have a clearer sense of the 1.2 plan and what actual code development we're working on. There's one or two things, bigger items, that might get labelled as 2.0 because the size and nature of them, but because of that I kind of feel the need to make a start on developing them quite soon. So yeah, I think there's going to be, that's the interesting thing with the release plan we have, is it doesn't mean all the development happens in series. I think it means some of the stuff we want to do for 2.0 we should make a start on soon, because they're bigger items. So the pluggable message routing for the runtime, for example, which enables the flow debugger. And I've said it many times, that is the feature I'm most keen to start building, but I just have to be patient because we have to get it done in the right order. Yeah, anyway, see, I've gone over the hour now because I just talk and talk and talk. I'm going to stop. So thank you all for joining. As I say, I hope that's useful. I hope it's interesting. It's always fun for me just to talk through the issue as I go through fix it, even if the fix ends up being 1 or 2 lines of code. Yeah, I hope that is useful. Let me know if there are topics. Let me know if there are clicked entirely the wrong button there. Let me know if there are bits you would like to see more of. Fixing bugs is fun. I want to get into actually developing new features. Obviously that's going to be less end-to-end in one stream, but I kind of feel the need to make a start on some of that so that some weeks we can make progress on a feature, even if it doesn't end up with a commit at the end of it or a pull request at the end of it. So yeah. Otherwise, be good, stay well, wear a mask, all that good stuff. And I will see you, for better or worse, next week at the same time. Bye, guys.